All right. Okay, so we're ready to go. All right, welcome everyone to today's Florida STR Real Estate Market Roundtable. My name's Jeremy. Many of you have spoke with me before. I'm thrilled to be joined by some incredible guests who know the Florida Gulf Coast market inside and out. With me today is Joe and Leah, who specialize in the 30A market, including Destin, Miramar Beach, and Panama City Beach areas, and Philip, who represents the Forgotten Coast, including Mexico Beach, Port St. Joe, and Cape San Blas. Thanks so much for being here, everyone. And also, just a side note, if anyone has any questions during the conversation, please feel free to put them in the chat, and our agents will jump into Q&A mode at the end of our webinar today. All right, guys. So, yeah, if you would, why don't you three introduce yourselves to our viewers and tell us your favorite thing about your market. Please paint us a picture of what short-term rental guests would expect to experience at a stay in your town.
I will get started on that. So Joe
Awesome.
Roney, I actually focus mostly in the Panama City Beach market. My market is a very family friendly market that has tons of new development in it. We're seeing huge increases in traffic every single year with all the new development happening, and the returns have been really fantastic for our clients. So we're talking 20% gross ROI or more, and we've seen some really great properties come on the market.
Nice. Awesome. All right. How about you, Leah?
And my name is
Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry. Go ahead, Philip. I apologize.
Philip Munoz. So like Jeremy mentioned, I specialize in the Forgotten Coast and also in the Destin Miramar Beach area along with Leah. So in the Forgotten Coast, it is a very special market, so completely different than the rest of the Florida Panhandle. It is very laid back, small town feel, very relaxed. So people go there for the nice, relaxing vacation and to get away from the busy areas like the Panama Cities and the 30As and things of that nature. So, very interesting market just because it is a little bit less well known, but it's becoming more well known now. AirDNA recently had it on as a top market in a couple different reports, so huge opportunity there that we're seeing. And then also in the Destin Miramar Beach area, like I said, Emerald, blue waters, beautiful area, very well known vacation market, very popular. So interested to dive into both markets for everyone today.
Awesome. That sounds good.
Hi, I am Leah. I am not Jeremy Hooker. Apparently, it says that on the bottom of the screen.
I think it's because I shared my link with you. That's probably what it is.
Yeah, so 30A is kind of right in the middle of all of these different places we're going to be chatting about today. Your 30A guest is going to be utilizing a lot of the tourism, different things to do in Destin and in Panama City Beach. So whether it's boating, going out on a pontoon boat, doing some charter fishing, some scuba diving, parasailing, things like that. Your 30A guests are actually going to be going to either place about 15 minutes-ish away from some of those areas. If they want to be a busybody, a lot of your 30A guests are, we consider that a quiet luxury area where a lot of guests come to completely relax, decompress, a very locals vibe. So there's lots of boutique shops, places to eat, and it's very walkable. You'll see places like Alice Beach and Rosemary Beach really rise to the top of people's places to visit when they come because they are beautiful, just very architecturally different, and just some really great dining experiences. But Destin and Miramar going to be a lot of opportunity in terms of positioning yourself with adding simple upgrades and updates to get ahead. And Miramar is very walkable, but Destin, water parks, go-kart areas, just your very old beach town, kind of just fun, a lot of shopping, and I describe it as a busybody place.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, that sounds good. Okay. And, I guess you guys kind of did touch on highlights in your markets. I was going to say if there's any highlights outside of that, like Joe, really any highlights you would mention based on the Panama City Beach market itself? Anything newer on the radar for 2026? Just out of curiosity.
Actually, yeah. Last year in June, Dolly Parton opened her Dolly Parton Dinner Theater, Pirate Dinner Theater here in Panama City Beach,
Cool.
and our having that in the winter months was a game changer Our properties that we own and co-host ourselves were up anywhere from 100 to 300% in November, December, and January because it's bringing more traffic to our area in that shoulder season. In a couple weeks, we also have a new Tootsie's Orchard Lounge, which Kid Rock is a part owner of. It's taking place where the old Spinnakers used to be, and it's a huge country western bar, restaurant, and bar on the beach right down here on the east end. And then we got a new Top Golf that just opened up last summer as well. So more and more development continues to happen. Compass Hotels just bought some property down here on the east end as well. They're going to be building a Margaritaville type hotel resort. So there's just tons of development happening, and that's why our traffic continues to increase.
Gotcha. Yeah, it sounds like PCB's got a busy year going on, but that's great. Some great new attractions. All right, well, that sounds good. Now, Philip, I know that you share some locale with Leah, but if you don't mind, let's shine some light on the Forgotten Coast, like Mexico Beach, Port St. Joe, Cape San Blas. Such a unique market. Why don't you share with our listeners today why it's absolutely a coast to be remembered? What's going on with the Forgotten Coast?
Yeah, so many people know in 2018, Hurricane Michael, Category 5 hurricane, hit Mexico Beach head on and just wiped it off the map, but also put it on the map as well. So since then, it's been rebuilding, and a lot of people have been finding out about the Forgotten Coast as a result of Hurricane Michael. And it just continues to grow. So we have a ton of new builds. Like I said, the recovery from the hurricane has resulted in a lot of new builds, but a lot of people finding out about the area and exploring this area. So we have people that come for fishing trips and just the multi-generational vacations where you have grandparents that have been coming since they were little kids, in addition to their kids, their grandkids. So a lot of people that come for those family vacations, which is that ideal guest avatar that you're seeking. And we also have once you get past Mexico Beach into Gulf County, which is Port St. Joe, Cape San Blas, Indian Pass area, all of the beaches are dog friendly. So in the properties that I own 4 properties in the area, co-host another 6 or 7, and all the properties that are dog friendly have seen a huge increase in bookings, additional revenue, and it's one of the biggest things that helps attract off-season bookings. So a ton of traffic for that. And then, like I said, as this area continues to grow in popularity, in addition to just the rebuild, we're seeing more and more people flock to this area to escape some of those busy beach markets and to truly have a nice laid back vacation.
That's good. Okay, so yeah, more buyers are discovering that area now. That's awesome. And yeah, it definitely sounds like a really nice, laid back, kind of just relaxing time. So you've got the excitement of the PCB area and a little bit further northwest there.
And the thing about
okay.
Sorry, and the thing about it too is all of the properties that we own and manage are also up year over year, which you don't typically see right now. It seems like a lot of people are going through, in different markets, they're going through a little bit of growing pains as the kind of COVID rage of short-term rentals and vacation rentals is kind of worn off. You're seeing a lot of people in different markets that are struggling to kind of make the numbers that they were making over the past couple of years. But in the properties that we own and manage, like I said, we've seen an increase in revenue, increase in nights booking, and overall average daily rate has gone up as well. So a lot of opportunity here, especially with most of the properties are being managed by the bigger property managers, and so those property managers tend to not do as well from a numbers perspective as somebody who operates, somebody who manages themselves or has more of a boutique manager manage for them. So it really gives you the opportunity to stand out against everyone else, in addition to out manage everyone else. So when you're competing against Grandma's Beach House, it's not hard to outperform them and be the top property in the market.
Gotcha. Yeah, and I'd say the pet friendly aspect really kind of adds a nice little something to a lot of those properties as well, because I mean, who wants to leave their best friend behind, when going on a vacation? So that's really exciting. That's good to hear. Okay. So what kind of inventory would you say that STR buyers are seeing along the Forgotten Coast? Is the property avatar kind of similar to that, of your neighboring markets up there? Or does it tend to be a little bit different as far as like home size that tends to be more popular?
So one of the biggest differences is we have some condos in this market, but not a ton of condos. So most of the properties that you're going to find are more of townhomes and single family homes. And And like I tell everyone, the single family homes is really the sweet spot, especially when, in the dog friendly area. Because if you can have that fenced in yard, have a single family home like that, that's huge for the dog owners. But I mean, in terms of overall inventory, I mean, anything from a 2 bedroom on up to 6, 7, 8 bedrooms, is what you see availability wise and performance wise. I mean, they can all do good. I mean, most of the properties that I have are the 2 to 3 bedroom that I personally own, and we're seeing, anywhere from grossing about 145K to, on a 3 bedroom, and a 2 bedroom that I recently bought that we're expecting to gross around 90 to 100K. So a lot of opportunity there. But again, as you get into the bigger properties as well, we actually co-host one on Indian Pass. That's a beachfront property, private pool, has a hot tub, and that property right now is on track to gross around 230, and that's with the owner taking 2 of the prime time weeks as well. So I
Oh,
think there's a
wow.
lot of
Nice.
opportunity in this market. I think as it becomes more well known, you're going to have a lot more people flock to this market to try to take advantage of these opportunities.
Yeah, that's exciting. That sounds good. Thanks so much for that, Philip. All right, guys. Well, let's talk numbers. So let's bounce back here to Joe and Leah. A common question from investors interested in your markets, Destin, Miramar, and Panama City Beach, is about price. So what's the typical entry price point you guys are seeing, and what kind of property does that represent?
I'll let Leah talk about Destin and Miramar, and then I'll jump in PCB.
Sounds good.
So you asked intro price, or is this kind of what works? I'm merging with some of the
Yeah,
chat. Sorry.
gotcha. No, no, thank you for that. I appreciate it. Yeah, just kind of what a typical intro price point looks like in your markets and what kind of a property that represents. So, be
Yeah.
it from the beginning intro price point to what might work a little bit better typically. Just
Yeah.
your take on that.
So AirDNA actually featured Destin as one of the top places in the $400,000 to $500,000 range, which I don't disagree with. There are a handful, a very small amount of places that I would put someone in that budget in Destin with. We have to take into account at that point that is probably going to be a condo versus a townhome. I really don't like townhome options for Destin because they're mostly dated. So when we get in that 1980s, 1990s category, then all of a sudden we're in this a little bit of a race against insurance prices. So a lot of the townhomes that are available in Destin are a little bit closer to the water, but then they also have this factor of being much older. So I would
Mm,
actually kind of default to a condo. There's a couple of different condo complexes where the HOA is a little bit higher. However, it includes all of your utilities, and that's including electric. So things like that, we have to really critically think when we're looking at deals and HOA prices, because for the smaller budget in an area like this, a lot of people think it's saturated. However,
mm,
a couple of these areas are so close to things like the water park and the go-kart tracks that they have great amenities and they're in demand more year round. So they have great occupancy and they have great numbers, upwards of 60 to 80 on average for gross revenue. When we get
that's
into the
good.
Miramar, my favorite Miramar category for somebody is kind of in the middle of the range, kind of that 600 to 800,000. I'm looking at a property right now that'll be around 875. It's got a private pool and it's a 3 bedroom. So Miramar has some great deals for that in between category in that kind of medium price range. When we get into 38, then we're kind of a little bit in the higher range for what works best. We're kind of looking at around a million to 1.3. And there's so many different factors that kind of increase your nightly rate as occupancy more year round to help level out that gross revenue to expect for those properties. Those are also more turnkey properties and they're newer. So a lot of different factors to take into account there too.
Okay, that sounds good. And Joe, what would you say? What's your take on that for Panama City Beach area?
Yeah, so Panama City Beach, I mean, you can get into Panama City Beach for under 500K, but similar to Destin, you're definitely going to be in the condo situation. But in PCB, there are some condos with some low HOA fees, under 800, under $700 a month. which allow you to still be, getting a pretty good cash flowing property with only a 20% down payment. So there's definitely some opportunities there. There's only about 4 or 5 total complexes in those condos that really, really work. But the ones that do can have really great performances. What I've found though is the single family home or the duplex, that is by far the biggest area to get a big return. And my most recent purchase, I bought a property in November of 2024, and we bought it for 785, got some seller credits, spent about 40K in our design and furnishing. So all in, we were a little under 800 after our seller credits. We did 144 last year in gross revenue with about a 35K profit, and that was in year one. So we hit a 21% cash on cash return after our seller credits, and we're on pace to beat that by about 18% already going into year two. So we're expecting, north of 160 to maybe even 170 plus on a 4-bedroom, 4-bath, and that's about 2.5 blocks from the beach. What's the biggest difference in Panama City Beach that you'll find over, different than Destin and 30A is we don't really have HOAs unless you're in a condo. So all of the homes are in mostly unincorporated areas. The restrictions are really lax. You still have to have your fire marshal visit and make sure that, it passes safety inspection, but you don't have to worry about those extra HOA fees. You can add private pools, which seems to be the hot spot. If you can find a house with a backyard, adding a private pool or one that already has a private pool, there's definitely a huge opportunity there. We have one house right now that's on the market for 675. It needs about 100K into it to put a private pool in the backyard. So all in under 800K, and it has views of the water, and you could easily be north of 160. So definitely some great ROI in the Panama City Beach market.
It sounds like it. Yeah, that's congratulations on that. Sounds like that one property is tracking to do extremely well. So that's good to hear. All right. Now, Philip, about the Forgotten Coast, what do numbers look like kind of farther, east, southeast on the Forgotten Coast side of things?
So similar to the rest of the Panhandle, it's hard to get into the area with anything less than 500K. There are a couple deals out there that there's one that I'm looking at right now that is in the low 400s, and views of the water from the block that the house is on. It really just needs to have an outdoor oasis built in the backyard because it has a large fenced-in yard. It's on a third of an acre, and it has the ability to add an in-ground pool, add a fire pit, add some putt-putt holes. But if you can do something like that to make some type of outdoor oasis for this particular property, I mean, you could definitely do 100K and be all in for, I don't know, probably less than 575, 600K all in. Wow. So, I mean, you're talking about a great return there on a great little property. And it's actually already an Airbnb now, and it's doing great as it is. So, that's one of the few properties that you'll find less than 500K that you can get in and do really well. But I think also, I mean, going a little bit larger and a little bit more expensive is also another area of opportunity. So the 3 bedrooms do well, but I think if you can get into the 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 bedrooms, I mean, those ones do extremely well. Like I mentioned earlier, we have that 6-bedroom in Indian Pass that is doing extremely well right now. It is beachfront, but it's on track, like I said, to do around 230, give or take a little bit there. So great opportunity there. I think the biggest thing is if you're in a dog friendly area, which a majority of the area is, like I mentioned before, is if you can have that single family home and have the fenced in yard for the dog, that's huge. If you have access to the pool, that's another huge thing. Private pools are going to win out. So if even if you don't have the ability to buy home that already has a private pool, if you can buy one that has a big enough lot to be able to add a pool and maybe add the pool next year, you really will set yourself up for success in terms of being able to set yourself apart and help drive a great return on your investment. Properties really go, I'd say the average purchase price in the Forgotten Coast is probably around 800K, give or take a little bit. But like I said, as you start getting up into these, 6, 7, 8 bedrooms, you could be in, the low 1.2, 1.3 onwards up to, 1.7, 1.8. And I think I mentioned this earlier, but AirDNA, just recently came out with their list of areas, top areas to invest in for 2026, and Forgotten Coast, which AirDNA classifies as Cape San Blas and St. George Island, but it was on 2 different lists. So it was on that, I think it was 550 to 750, and also on 1 million to 5 million. So like I said, AirDNA is, picking this market out already, and this is based on a lot of the traditional property managers that aren't netting the best returns. So obviously AirDNA's data is based on those numbers. So if they're already identifying this as the top 10 market for two different price points, it's only a matter of time before everyone finds out about it, and they move in and they start outperforming these larger property managers and really see some great returns.
Yeah, it sounds like it's a nice little hidden secret right now. So yeah, it's one to definitely keep your eye on, guys. Sounds good. I know you guys have kind of already touched on this a little bit, but if you want to elaborate on this any more, I was going to say, let's just kind of touch back on numbers a little bit. You guys add a little bit of color to the numbers. Joe and Leah, when an investor asks, how do these properties actually perform as short-term rentals? I guess we could kind of separate that a little bit as far as like, I know Leah, you touched on a little bit ago, like we can say, how do these properties perform as short-term rentals? And if you want to break it down by like condo versus traditional average size single family home versus like larger family properties, what would you say performs the best? What would you say is the easiest for getting that best return on investment in each area?
Go ahead, Lee.
Joe, you want me to start?
Yeah.
Okay, I feel like geography wise, we're just kind of going down the line. In Destin, it's going to be a lot of condos in that three to
Mhm.
$500,000 range. But then when we get in the 1.2 to $1.5 million range and upwards of that, then things start getting really interesting with this single family. We're always taking into account the fact that a condo is going to max out at a certain level. So
Right.
you're going typically is on a 3 bedroom condo, you can expect tops about 120, 130 average. So, sometimes spending eight or $900,000 on a really beautiful condo, by the time you factor in those HOA fees, we're really just capping ourselves much lower than if we could get in a single
Mhm.
family home. And that's the whole point of kind of expediting these searches, right? Because as someone that is in such a short-term rental space, we are studying amenities. When we get into the
Mhm.
single family homes, then we can get you a garage, which gets you a game room. We can get you a yard, which gets you possibly a pool. We can get you a really great option that's just as close to the beach as a condo, even time-wise, and kind of give your guests that full experience that they would not have at a condo. A lot of times, too, when guests are searching, I tell people this with private pools, about 60 to 70% of our market has a pool. And that's really important data to take into account, is that this is not just our opinion that you need a private pool. It's kind of that searching effect of when you go and you're searching in our area as a guest, you come across a 4 bedroom property that has a private pool. Then all of a sudden, the guest is thinking, oh, that would be nice to have my family there. That seems really cool. That's a great experience. You can see yourself there with kids, with grandkids. Then for the rest of your search, you're thinking about that property with the pool. So those are the properties that get booked up the quickest because all of a sudden you put something in front of them that they did not realize could be possible. And a lot of times in these more intense months of the summer and the March where people are taking vacations anyway, they're budgeting larger amounts because it's a prime vacation for them. They're saving for it. We're being able to charge a higher amount because we have something that is very valuable that a lot of people really want and they will pay more during those times. So
Right.
it's positioning yourselves that way. Also, in terms of Miramar Beach and budget and entry price, kind of like what Philip was touching on with a lot of the value add, there's a lot of opportunity to go in and do very simple upgrades and updates and achieve higher revenue. Looking at your competition in that certain pocket is critically important to analyze your competitors and just simply see how to get ahead. And we're exchanging furniture. We're actually designing very simple upgrades. And then, yes, we are taking garages and we're making them into full game rooms. A lot of people take garages and they put a golf cart or bikes in there. And
Mhm.
it's just most investors are in that mindset of a garage is a storage area. That's great. I'll use it for that. But
Yeah,
we're in that mindset of knowing how to position yourself for a guest, not necessarily for you yourself. And
exactly.
that makes
What's
a
the
huge
highest and
difference
best
in
use for the
revenue.
rental?
Yes.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's great. And Joe, how about what you see up there, Panama City Beach area?
Yeah, I'm going to kind of touch on what Leah and Philip was saying.
Yeah.
People want an experience, right? That's what they want when they go on vacation now. And when you can create an experience in your property, you're going to not just book in the summer months at a higher rate, but you're also going to book in the winter months. That four-bedroom that I bought, most people
Hmm.
do $0 to $1,500 in January, and I did $6,400 last month in that property. We have a backyard with a putting green, a pool, we have arcade games, all of those things. And I'm gonna touch on what Philip was saying about property managers and why some of the AirDNA data is skewed. I have two properties side by side. It's actually a duplex on the west end, Laguna Beach, and my wife and I went in and designed property A in May of 2024, and it was a five-bedroom, 5.5 bath, golf front, heated pool, hot tub, the whole works, right? 53 steps to the beach. The property next to it's identical, so it's a duplex, identical floor plan, the whole works.
Hmm.
And our property was very well designed, and we did $223,000 in that revenue. I think they bought this five-bedroom for 1.3, so we did 223,000. But the property next door, which was ran by one of the top property managers that had an average design, did $103,000. So if you look at
Wow.
AirDNA on two properties side by side, we had $120,000 difference between the two of them. And the only
Hmm.
difference was the way it was designed and the way it was managed. So when you look at the data, when you're looking into AirDNA data, you really need to look at what are the top 10% of properties doing and how are they getting those numbers? Because the Airbnb or short-term rental industry in today's world is a business. It's not a
Hmm.
side hustle. You can't have my for anymore. In this space, they're making money, and at today's prices, you can't be average. So, no matter which market you choose to invest in, whether it be with Leah, Philip, or myself, if you're looking in the Emerald Coast, Forgotten Coast area, just know that you have to have some extra budget for those added amenities and that added design, and that's what's going to take your property to the next level to achieve those 150, 200, 250K plus numbers, because you just can't be
Exactly.
average anymore.
Yeah. No, 100%. No, I
But one
totally
thing that
agree.
I
And
want
that's,
to touch on real quick that
sorry,
Joe had
go ahead,
just
Phil.
said is that another thing that we're seeing across all of these markets is that you're seeing a lot of new inventory hit the market for sale because these people bought, a couple of years ago in the height of COVID, and they've had these traditional property managers running these properties, and they haven't been performing well. So when they're sitting there looking at their return, and they're actually losing money every year. We're starting to see a lot of those properties hit the market right now. So I think now is a prime time to be a buyer in these markets because there's a lot more inventory in the market. Days on market is a lot longer. So I think a lot of these sellers are willing to negotiate and accept less than maybe they even purchased for a couple of years ago, all because these properties are not being managed very well, and with the right design and the right management, these properties can really excel and they can be some great revenue producers. But you have to have the design, you have to create a great experience, and they have to be managed well. And if you can do those things, you can really excel anywhere in the Florida Panhandle.
Nice. Yeah, definitely, can do wonders with proper positioning and, even simple things that you would think that, would be obvious, like photos. You see a lot of people on certain platforms that, just kind of have grainy photos of their property. Even things like that just really make a property stand out amongst others. Not, you know, to mention also the amenities and best use of space, like Leah mentioned, with converting garages into game rooms or theater rooms, things like that. That is a fantastic value add and experience add from, the guests' point of view for their stay. So you guys, that's all fantastic information. I really appreciate you sharing all that with us today. And I guess I know you all have kind of touched on this too, but just if there's anything extra, I was going to say before we wrap up, I'd love to get any additional thoughts you guys might have on what buyers should keep in mind heading into 2026 for Emerald Coast, Forgotten Coast areas.
I think kind of what Philip just said. We put properties on our VIP list. We're looking in this market every day to find deals, but the prices that you see are not going to be your final price, right? We need to actually take these properties, put them in a pro forma, and help you make a decision that meets the goals. And if the numbers don't meet the goals, we're going to move to the next one. And
Right.
one of the things that you'll find about all three of us is that none of us are in this for a sale. We truly want to help you be successful in your purchase, and whether it be the acquisition or the additional resources after the fact. And we want to make sure that you're making a financial decision where it's data driven, but also understand the boots on the ground. And I'm going to share one real quick review that I got recently because it kind of
Absolutely.
wraps everything up that we've been talking about. So I had a private message review. So we had a public review and a private review on a property that we designed and had the backyard completely redone. And the review basically states, we always come to Panama City Beach. We've been coming here for over a decade with our family. We always have a great beach vacation. We get back home in the evening. Everybody kind of goes to their rooms, veges out, and that's it. But because the amazing outdoor space that Joe created in this backyard, everybody put their phones down this week and we created the most amazing family memories. And that review, in my opinion, sums up exactly what you should be looking for when you're creating a short-term rental is how can you get the family to put their phones down and spend time together?
Exactly. No, that's huge, and that's great. That you should frame that. That's just such a great review. I mean, that's something you don't, that's something you should be able to bring families together, and that's great to hear. All right. So if you guys don't mind, I was going to say, thank you for sharing your expertise with us today. But I was going to I know you guys have kind of been going back and forth a little bit in the chat as we've been going throughout the webinar. But I was going to say, if you don't mind, just to answer a few questions, if you don't mind, like read them aloud, answer the questions as they're in the chat for the viewers. And I'm going to go ahead and grab our market match link also and throw it in there for folks that would like to talk with us about exploring your markets.
I know
All right.
Robert touched on JetBlue being an airport, or excuse me, airline that's coming to Destin, and that is a big one that was just signed a few months ago. Allegiant has also been expanding for the last couple of years. They have their own terminal now at BPS. I'm always shocked to know how many people don't even know who Allegiant is. But they are in select airports. They have really affordable flights, but they're just seasonal. So sometimes it may not show up on an Expedia search. They're in all different areas, Nashville, North Carolina, different hubs like that. That's in VPS, but then Panama City Beach has some really great options with Southwest. And that can dump you out in 30A. You're about 20 minutes from either airport. So both of those are really great options as far as airports.
I'll add, I fly Allegiant a lot, and I can get last minute flights for less than $75 to go from St. Louis to Destin, and there's not any other airline around that you could get a last minute flight that cheap.
That was amazing. Yeah, they do have some fantastic prices. All right. Do we have anything else in there? I know you guys have been answering questions. Thank you so much.
I will add
Multitasking
one
like
more
pros
thing.
that you are. Yeah, sorry, go
I'll
ahead.
add one more thing, Jeremy, is even though the airport thing is a big thing and doing that, we are a regional drivable destination. And I think that's probably the most important thing to touch on because people like to invest in a place that is recession proof. And the Emerald Coast, in my opinion, is probably the most recession proof place to invest in the entire United States because 75% of our visitors actually drive. We are driving distance from Nashville, from Birmingham, from Atlanta, from Louisiana, from Texas, from Missouri. All of these people, and if you go up and down any of our markets and you look at license plates, you're going to see license plates from states all over the Midwest to the
Mhm.
Southeast to even South Central. So it is a very regional drivable destination for us. And that's what makes it easy. So when people do have financial hard times, instead of that 7-night vacation that they flew to Hawaii, they take that 4-night driving trip down to the Emerald Coast so they can get their few days on the beach and get away. So that's one of the things that attracted me when I first started investing in the Emerald Coast, is that it is a drivable destination for all of my family and friends.
That's great. That is a very good, very valuable point there. Okay.
One of the other
Right.
questions that Robert
Well,
had asked in the
yeah,
chat
yeah.
was about the magic number for bed bath standpoint from both a PCV and a Destin perspective. So Leah kind of touched on Destin. So that 4 to 6 bedroom is great. 7 to 8 definitely jumps. But I mean, as far as neighborhoods go, like in Destin specifically, Crystal Beach, Holiday Isle, those are very popular areas. They do really well. When you get over to the Miramar Beach area, Frangista Beach is another popular area. But I'd say anytime you can be as close as possible to the beach, obviously walking distance to the beach, have that in-ground pool, private pool, those are going to be the big hitters and the ones that do the best. But those larger homes seem to attract the larger groups, which obviously spend quite a bit of money for those bigger vacations. So if you can have those larger homes in those particular areas or neighborhoods, that's really where you're going to do well in that area. And I'll let Joe touch on PCV from that question.
Yeah, pretty much same boat. That the 4-bedroom or more is definitely, we're seeing more multi-generational family vacations, and this is across everywhere, where 2 or 3 families are sharing a space. And I'm going to touch on one thing. King beds is so important. It's probably the number one mistake I see investors make when they're setting up their short-term rental. They're like, "Ooh, I'll have a king, a queen, and a bunk bed." Well, two king beds is going to outperform a king and a queen by anywhere from 30 to 40%. And it's because there's a lot of people in our country that don't want to sleep in queen beds. So if you only have a queen bed option, you are eliminating up to 50% of the population from booking your place. So most of my properties that are performing really well, like my 4-bedroom homes, we have 3 king bedrooms and 1 bunk room. Or maybe that 4th bedroom is 2 queens, or 2 fulls, depending on what can be fit in there. But the 3 king bedrooms is a game changer if you can make that happen.
Good to know.
Also, Dorothy touched a trigger question. It's triggering. Hurricanes. A lot of people do generalize Florida about weekly. I have to kind of at least have a discussion just setting some of these articles straight about the Emerald Coast, because the Emerald Coast is very different in terms of flood elevation and the FEMA certificate and how these insurance companies are writing your policies. We can have a home that is 4,300 square feet, a block off the beach, and have it be priced at 6,500 for an insurance premium for the year. So the idea that Florida in general is too high with insurance could not be further from the truth. Walton County, 30A, actually has the highest peak in Florida. It's not the highest county all the way through, but
Yes.
it is, yeah, it's interesting to note that you do want to make sure that we are checking certain places in Florida and how that looks with your overall cost for the year. And the Emerald Coast is very, very reasonable with insurance policies. Governor DeSantis worked on this also last June, and mandated about 12 new carriers to come into play since last June. So insurance is not an issue here. I know Philip can touch on Hurricane Michael a little bit more than us over this way.
Yeah, so real quick on that point. Yeah, a lot of the newer builds, they did do pretty well. It's some of the older homes that were here before this place really exploded that took the brunt of the hit, I guess, and didn't last, for lack of better words. Like I said, I mean, there's been a ton of building. Once Hurricane Michael came in, the building codes got even tighter and more stricter. So I know all these newer builds are being built to even higher standards than what was in place before Hurricane Michael. So I would have no hesitation in investing in any Florida market that has newer builds. I've invested in 4 properties in the Forgotten Coast, 1 in the Destin area. So most of my properties are all newer, and I look to those properties for that safety, I guess, for lack of better words, in terms of them being built strong enough to withstand some of these powerful hurricanes.
Okay. All right. Any of you guys have any other answers to questions in the chat, or are we about ready to wrap up here? Just didn't want to cut time short if anyone had anything else. Everybody good?
I don't
All
really
right.
see any other questions in the chat, but like we talked about before, is right now it's really a buyer's market. We're seeing a lot of things get priced way too high and they sit on the market for a while. So I wouldn't be discouraged or shy away from, making an offer on a place just because the listing price is set where it's at. Like, I see every day properties that are closing for significantly less than what is listed. Sometimes 100K on like a 700K, original list price or something like that. So things are definitely being priced way too high right now. So if you are ready to jump into the short-term rental space, don't be scared away by that. Make sure that you
Don't be
get with
scared.
an agent that is very familiar with short-term rentals that can kind of help you with that business case and kind of putting together the numbers to make sure that you're making a wise decision. Because like I said, I think a lot of people who bought in the COVID era just bought these places because they were, the popular thing in that area and everyone was able to make money. But I think now the time that we're at is you really have to stand out, provide a great experience. And if you can stand out, provide a great experience, you're going to do really well. And I think that that's where a lot of these large property managers kind of struggle. So make sure that you get some great feedback and some great advice from your agent and, other investors, people like that are in the know for those particular markets, because that will save you, a ton of headache and a lot of heartache and will make sure that you make a great decision.
I'm going to touch on one thing
That's
on
good
that, because
advice.
some people,
Yes.
when you say that, are going to say, well, is the market down? Is the prices down? Well, the honest truth is it's that the prices really haven't come down. They've just come back to where they should have been. And I'll give a quick example. I have a client that we actually co-host for that bought a property in 2023. And when she bought it, it appraised at $800,000. And her agent at the time talked her into paying $100,000 over asking because it was such a great house and it was going to do so much money for her. So she paid $900,000, even though the appraisal was only 800K. And now she wants to sell it because she's not making money, but it's only appraising still at 800K. It might be 820 now. So she's upside down because she overpaid for it. And there was a lot of agents that didn't really understand short-term rentals, that pushed people into sales to make a quick buck instead of educating their clients and helping them make good financial decisions. And that's why we're seeing so much on the market. It's not that the prices are coming down a ton. They're coming down to, what they should have been. So the market correction is really just going back to what it really should have been.
Right.
Yeah, and we are
That sounds
seeing a lot that's it's coming on the market, but it's also flying off. And that's just people that did not get in at the end of the year last year. We're seeing a huge influx this January and February. Everyone has got this on their radar for cost segregation, and they know that at the end of the year, all of a sudden we get in these bidding wars and everyone's searching for the
mhm.
same thing for the same reason. So right now, as we're going into this season where people are pulling the trigger anyways, they wait for this off season until we're getting in the March, April, the booking season, heavy booking season. Everyone's kind of positioning themselves and they're looking right now so heavily. So it is important to dive in deep. We say a lot, deals are created. They're not just going to sit in front of you. The list price,
Right.
that's what they want. Let's make a deal. Let's make an offer, because you're going to be the one that creates that deal. And yes, we are seeing 50, 100, sometimes 150 to 200,000 off of a list price, because right now those sellers are still wanting offers. They're setting for a little bit longer period of time, kind of as a layover from last year where interest rates were high.
Okay. Yeah, that's very good information, guys. And I know, right now is probably kind of like you mentioned, everybody waiting and rushing last minute, and then, the competition's high when you're trying to trying to get your property listed up and running for cost seg season, get your visits in for the year. It's better to start early, have, pick from a lot more inventory than trying to wait last minute. And, prices reflect demand too, so demand goes up, sellers are going to want more for their properties, and it's just going to create a lot more stress and chaos in the 11th hour. So that's really good to hear. Thank you for sharing that. I really do appreciate it. And Philip, it looks like we got another question for you. Marcy was asking if you had to pick your absolute favorite thing about the Forgotten Coast, what would that be? Down towards the, I guess, Cape San Blas and Fort St. Joe?
Um, it's hard to pick just one thing, but I would say that probably, just the laid back small town feel that the area has, is truly a special place. It's unlike anything else. Like whenever I go to other vacation markets, the Smokies, for example, it's constantly, there's crowded, there's traffic, there's people everywhere. When you come to the Forgotten Coast, it's so laid back, it's so just chill, and you can have that nice relaxing family vacation, bring the dog with you. Everyone has a great time. Everyone leaves relaxed, and everyone leaves happy, making memories with each other.
It sounds nice. Yeah, it sounds like something everybody could use. Absolutely. Just kind of break free from the hustle and bustle of every day and unwind.
Exactly.
Sounds good. All right, guys. Well, if that seems to be everything here. I would like to say, of course, thank you to our expert agents here that joined me today, and thanks to everyone who tuned in. If you'd like to connect with any of today's guests to learn more about these Florida markets, there's a link to schedule a market match call with me or my colleague Taylor in the notes or in the chat section here. And you can schedule a quick one-on-one with us to connect with Joe, Leah, Philip, or any of our expert STR agents throughout the country. So we'd love to talk to you, discuss, what your short-term rental investment goals look like, and connect you with some of our fine expert agents here that obviously are extremely polished in their markets and doing well in their own investments. So want to help you do well with yours. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in, and we'll see you on the next one in a couple of weeks.